Just as a reminder and as a benefit for Councillor Shaw, I just want to remind people about what the overall project goal is here, is that we're working with our project partners as well as with the community to refine the original vision. So a plan and a vision was put in place for this area about 20 years ago, and it's just really time for us to revisit that plan because many things have changed since then. And our goal here is to facilitate more housing, transportation, and business employment options in a way that are consistent with Tigard's strategic plan to be walkable, healthy, and inclusive. So that's the overarching goal. And this is just a graphic project schedule to let you kind of know where we're at in the project. So we're kind of in the middle. We've actually gone through and documented all the existing conditions. We've evaluated opportunities, needs, and challenges in the area. And
Susan, I'm not seeing your slides advancing. Are other people?
sometimes I think there's a delay.
Okay.
Are other people seeing the project schedule yet?
Yes.
I'm on the slide that says project schedule, and it says project is here with a line, a dotted line going, big black line going through.
Do you see that yet, Mr. Mayor?
No, but I'm sure I will now. I didn't realize that others could see it, so maybe I'll change my internet connection here too. I'll try to. Sorry about that.
No. Those are good things to speak up about. I've had that same experience in other presentations by others. I'm like, I'm not seeing it yet, and then it happens. But hopefully you'll be able to see shortly. So for those of you who can't see the project schedule, we're kind of in the middle, and we're just now really working on developing and refining kind of the future land use and transportation ideas or choices that we want to present back to the community, and ultimately create a body of recommendations that we would bring to City Council. We are working with a stakeholder working group. They're advising the project as we move ahead. It's a very large and very diverse group. It has community members as well as community organization representatives, city and county staff, TriMet, ODOT, Metro staff, business owners and operators, and of course the consultant team. Just as a reminder for those folks that may not know this area very well, the Washington Square Regional Center actually straddles Tigard, unincorporated Washington County, and Beaverton. So that's why we're having to do a lot of coordination with different folks. This is our project team, and I just want to call out, in addition to kind of all the technical planner, economic type transportation folks, we're also working with Verde. There are our community, CBO, community-based organization. Forgot about what the B stood there for a second. And they're doing a wonderful job helping us reach out to underrepresented community members in this area. And in my previous briefing, I talked a lot about how the residents in this area are actually very diverse. There's a large African and African American community here, as well as some community members who are Spanish speaking. And so what I'm going to be doing today with this briefing is summarizing community engagement to date, as well as technical analysis, and then give you a preview of some of our preliminary findings and describe the kinds of land use and transportation choices that we're developing. So with regard to community engagement, we have actually, given in the age of COVID, we had to kind of shake things up. So we've ended up conducting really many in-depth interviews with community members to understand what they're thinking and what they'd like to see in this area. And those interviews were actually conducted not only by city staff and Verde staff, but actually mostly by our stakeholder working group members who are residents in this area. And so they reached out to their networks. And so we got a really lovely, diverse representation of the community in this area because they reached out to their networks. So the interviews were conducted in English, Spanish, and Swahili. And just to give you a general sense that the mix of respondents we got were 62% renters and 38% owners. And that actually tracks with the renter-owner split in this area. So that was really good. And then we also had an online survey, and we had 26 people fill out that survey, and most of them live or work here and others shop here, and most of those survey respondents identified as white. And the kinds of things we asked was we generally wanted to understand what people liked about this area and what they'd like to see change or get better. And so these are some of the high level things that many people said. So it's a great place to live. It's a great family neighborhood. But in terms of improvements, people wanted to see, and we heard this a lot, about better, safer walking and biking conditions and more affordable and more family housing options, amongst other things. And I'm going to be peppering some of like more detailed things about we've heard that are specific to each of the sub areas I'm going to be talking about throughout the presentation. So you kind of get a more detailed feel about what we're hearing from the community. But first, I'm just going to kind of give you a broad brush look at the kind of technical analysis we've conducted and all the coordination we've been doing. We did some in-depth market and development feasibility to look at what's feasible at different scales in this area. We completed a non-conforming analysis to understand what is and is not conforming with our current regulations. We reviewed our zoning code for barriers to development. And we also actually held a series of workshops with TriMet and the mall owners to talk about visions for transit-oriented development in the future on the mall property. And we've been doing a lot of coordination, as I've been talking about, with multiple agencies. And in general, this just applies overall, that what we're seeing where there's demand for new construction is that there's strong demand for housing of all types. There's also strong demand for car dealerships in very specific locations. And then there's less demand for small professional offices, obviously retail and larger offices, that probably doesn't surprise you, and flex and light industrial. It's not that industrial uses don't want to locate here, but there's just no demand for building new buildings to support those uses. And then on the feasibility side, again, housing comes up, very feasible, in addition to being very strong demand for. So if you look at the 3 columns on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that residential alone and residential mixed use of different scales is actually very feasible. And as you get to 2 and 3 story or 5 and 7 story or 8+ story office, it gets a lot less feasible. And that's not just because of COVID, because the data points that they used, reach farther back than our current situation with COVID. So that's where we're at generally. And then I just briefly wanted to show you this one graphic. I know it probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm just going to highlight that there's not a lot of green checks on this graph. And so this is us looking at very detailed, like sub areas in the regional center area and determining.
Susan, can you narrate more what you're describing? Because I'm still on the cover screen and you're talking in a way that I can't even track what's happening. And I've asked for somebody to send me the presentation, but can you at least describe what you're showing?
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Mr. No, I'm so sorry. Is everybody else tracking with the presentation?
Can I make a recommendation if we just maybe pause for a moment and the mayor can log out and log back in? If that helps?
Yeah, let's do that. I'll unshare my screen, and maybe if I reshare,
if we're gonna do that, I'm gonna just reboot my whole computer. So I'll be back in a moment.
Okay, yeah.
And just in case, I'm gonna unshare my screen and maybe reshare it. Sometimes that does the trick as well. So hello again. Well, he does that.
Internet's been spotty.
Well, the mayor does that. Any questions so far?
Yeah, this is Councilor Newton. I did go back and look at the reports that you had given us, just to kind of refresh my memory. And I find just kind of an interest. I kind of find the whole thing about car dealerships interesting. So is it because of the proximity to I-5 and 217? Are we talking about those locations right at the freeway interchanges? Is that?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me.
That is exactly correct.
And the other thing, when I was looking at it, you made a note in one of the studies about indoor gyms and sort of fitness activities. And I wonder, because I have a friend who is in that business, and they're thinking about moving more to online, sort of the Peloton model. So I just wonder, certain activities you're going to want to go and participate in. You're not going to want to do them in your living room. But just a thought that we may have some of those impacted by people just moving to other options because they've been successful during this 10 months. Like I bought a rowing machine, so you know, I've been to the gym since March. So anyway, yeah, so I just thought that was interesting because those were such specific uses. Have you found things like that with other land uses, or is it just those two that kind of stood out? Thanks.
It's actually interesting that you bring up kind of the niche recreational uses because there are quite a few. I mean, there's the skydiving place. There was the trampoline place that sadly actually went out of business. You know, there's a swimming place. There's the futsal place. So there's actually a lot of indoor recreation in this area, and as with the Sky High, the trampoline gym, obviously it's suffered tremendously because of COVID. I don't know if they're going to come back. As you said, there's a lot of people going to an online model, but it actually is leaving. Like for example, the Sky High building now is vacant, and I know that that property owner is struggling to find like a new tenant. So we might see more of that before this is all over, sadly. So yeah. I see Mr. Mayor is back. Are you with us?
Kind of. I can't. Oh, there we go.
There you are. Hello. Okay. Shall we? Was somebody able to send him? Actually, who is the city record? Actually, it looks like it's Caroline. Were you able to send him the PowerPoint, Caroline?
Yes.
We got one in council mail.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Well, let me share my screen, and hopefully, if you can't see it, Mr. Mayor, you can track through the PowerPoint that you just got. Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, can you see the chart with
non-conforming analysis?
Yes. Yay. The reboot worked. So all that I was wanting to get across with this graphic is to show that in many areas within the regional center, the portion that's in Tigard, much of the development, whether it's the actual use or the physical development of the building and the parking lot, much of it does not conform to our current regulations. And that's just something that we always want to pay attention to as we think about changing regulations. Sometimes that's okay when things are non-conforming because we want to go in a different direction, but sometimes it highlights where there might be barriers to things that we want to have so that things become conforming. So we always want to take a look at that and think about if we actually want to facilitate more conformance in this area. And right now there's not a lot.
What's the key for the half-filled?
Oh, so partial. That means like
partial. Okay.
Maybe about half of the development is conforming, but the other half isn't. So it's a mixed bag essentially.
Okay.
Okay. So now I'm going to be talking about basically what we've heard, what we've learned with regard to very specific sub areas, because in this area there's no kind of homogeneity. Is that the right word? It's very diverse, and it's the kinds of development that's in this area. I'm also going to be talking about the kinds of choices that we're developing for land use and transportation options that we want to present to the community. And just a caveat, what I'm presenting to you tonight is not how we present this information to the community. And I also want to kind of just make a statement overall, so you kind of to set expectations for you as I talk about these things, that what we're finding as we're developing, reviewing the findings and developing choices, is that we are moving away from a vision for this area that is very dense, very vertical mixed use everywhere. Right now, the zoning assumes, and even in some place demands, very dense, very vertical mixed use development everywhere. And we're finding that that is not really supported by the market and is not necessarily always desirable by the community or helpful to our business community. And so the kinds of choices we're developing actually involve many, many small changes to help do refinements, to kind of remove barriers or to support a certain kind of development in a different kind of way. So there's no one big move or one overarching theme. unlike what you might see out in River Terrace, for example, because that's a green field, unlike this area, which is highly developed already. And the other thing that we're doing with our choices is that we really want to be mindful of developing choices and recommendations that are really achievable, that can happen in the near term in the next 10 to 20 years, and are really market and community driven. Because one of the things that what we want to learn from the past and what happened 20 years ago when they aspired to have this area redevelop into a really dense mixed use area, that didn't happen. And so we want to make sure that we actually make some smart moves now to nudge it forward in some way, shape, or form, as opposed to just nothing happening. So that's our goal here. And so why we're kind of developing the kinds of choices that you'll see. So these are the three areas. Metzger is off to the right, and that's between Hall Boulevard and Greenberg and north of Highway 217. Metzger is just a shorthand for this area. Obviously, there's a lot of residents in this area, but Greenberg Road has a lot of businesses as well. And we're just generally calling that middle red area the mall, even though it definitely has more than the mall on the property, again, just shorthand. And then on the left side, the Nimbus Cascade area, named after the two streets that serve that area. So Metzger, starting with this sub area, this is what we've heard. People want to see more affordable and family housing options, not just apartments. They want more green space, they want more business diversity, and they want better access to parks and trails, and definitely more sidewalks. Probably not a surprise. And in terms of what we found is that there is a strong potential for a wide range of diverse housing types to fill in this area. There's not a lot of vacant land, there is some, but there are some, options for even some of the larger lots redeveloping, with a couple more units, and some redevelopment sites along Hall and along Oak. So there's really a strong demand in the market, and there's still a strong need locally and regionally for more diverse housing options. We've also learned that the businesses provide a lot of great local services and that they buffer this residential neighborhood from Greenberg and the traffic on Greenberg. And also, not surprisingly, that this area lacks a lot of both PED connections and infrastructure in the form of sidewalks. It doesn't have a lot of usable open space, and it really lacks good access to both Metzger Park, which is over on your right here off the screen. It's actually not technically in the regional center. It lacks good access to the park, doesn't have actually great access across Greenberg Road to the mall, and it doesn't have great access to our trail system. So on the zoning side of things, and this is again not how we presented to the community, we're really looking at simplifying the zoning. There's a lot of colors on the screen here. We think there might be too many colors, and also perhaps the lines might not be right in the right place for today's market and today's community preferences. So we're looking at adjusting the zoning in this area and possibly even reducing some minimum densities to align better with existing development and market demand. And in terms of the kinds of things we want to ask the community about, based on what we've heard and based on the findings, we want to ask them about how they would prioritize access to Metzger Park, which is off of your screen to the right, to the mall and those businesses and services across Greenberg, and across Highway 217 to the south, where there could be better access to the trail system and to more parks. So we want to ask them what their priorities are about that. And we also want to talk to them about the kinds of housing that they might expect to see, in part because of a new state law that will require missing middle housing on some of the large lots in this area, but in part just to let them know, even based on existing zoning and what we might be proposing about slightly refining those zoning boundaries, we want to let them know what that would look like on a, on like the scale of that housing, what that would look like in their neighborhood, so they understand the kind of change that might happen in the neighborhood over time. So that's Metzger. I'm going to pause there to see if anybody has any questions about Metzger before I move on to the mall.
Susan, can I just ask you to let me know when you're moving from slide to slide so I can follow?
Okay.
Because it stopped. I didn't get. I'm still stuck on the non-conforming analysis slide. So
Oh,
I
no.
kind of. That's okay. I've been following along, but I can't always tell when you're moving from slide to slide.
Got it.
So if you can just tell me, that'd be great.
Okay. So I'm moving now to the slide that says mall sub area community input at the top, and it's got all the bubbles on it.
Got it.
Okay. So this is what we've heard about the mall sub area from the community, that they really like the mall. It's very convenient for shopping. It's family friendly, but they think there's way too much asphalt. They want more green space. They want better access to transit, and they want better connections to the mall from the neighborhood. That's what we're hearing. Um, so what we have learned about the mall, or this area, is that this is where we think we can expect to see the most transformation in the whole regional center. And the mall knows that as well, that they're already starting to transform with Sears, down here at the bottom with the big X through it. And sorry, Mr. Mayor, I moved to the next slide called malls.
I figured it out.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So they're already starting to transform. They know that they have to kind of change to remain competitive. That this style of mall development is it's changing and it needs to change. And so, with the Sears redevelopment, they're looking at bringing different kinds of uses, including housing, to this site. And they're also looking at even this northern area, kind of right over where it says Washington Square. They're right now doing some master planning for redeveloping this area up here, kind of around the J.C. Penney store, which is still there, but they're thinking it might not be, into the future. So there's great possibility for transformation here, but the market is really unpredictable. And also, it does need a lot more improvements. I mean, it really lacks PED connectivity and infrastructure. And even though there's this nice big green space in the middle of it, that's a private cemetery. So there's also not really good usable green space in this area or good access to Metzger. Moving to the next slide. So this just really shows the transformation that they've already started on. On the left-hand side is the existing Sears building, and on the right-hand side is the actual redevelopment project they've already gotten approval for, but they just haven't started yet because of COVID. But that's a lot more and different development intensity and a more granular pedestrian and street network that they're starting to build into that southern area, which is great. And this was just a thought exercise that we did with them. So, Mr. Mayor, I moved to the next slide where it has two aerial photos, and on the left is of the mall, and at the same scale on the right is the Pearl District in Portland. So these are at the same scale. So view them side by side. And then next slide. This is them merged. So this kind of shows just the potential of the kind of development intensity that could happen on the mall property. The mall property is huge. So a lot could go on into this northern area, and that's what they're currently looking at right now.
Susan, when you say it's huge, what is the actual acreage?
The mall site is about 100 acres.
Okay.
The next slide. So some of the things that we want to ask the community, and now this is kind of like just a very generic, more focused on the street work kind of image, and showing both planned street PED connections and future proposed street connections in that dashed red circle. So this is where we think kind of like the next stage in the mall's transformation could happen. And, we're doing this in concert, with the mall. So this is not us just dreaming about this. This is what they're thinking about as well. And so one of the things we really want to focus on with the community, as well as with the council, is this may happen without us doing anything, but it may not. And so the question is, should we incentivize and or partner with this property owner to help this dense mixed-use development happen, as long as we also get the kinds of public amenities that we think will really benefit the community. And, that's key. Those two things together are really key. So those are the kinds of things that we want to talk to the community about. Next slide. We also want to share with them what we've talked with TriMet about and the mall, which is about providing not just a kind of centralized transit center on the mall property, and so that transit center with the X through it, that's where the current transit center is. So buses kind of come into the mall and they go out almost the same way. They don't go through the mall property. And both the mall and TriMet are actually interested with redevelopment about bringing buses through the mall and having multiple bus stops, and also moving the bus layovers elsewhere. So that's, we think, a really positive step in the right direction. And I just wanted to let you know about this thing that we uncovered because it may come back. It might die in the vine, but I just wanted to share this with you, that in the course of talking with the mall, we discovered that there is a 50-year-old no-build agreement between the cemetery and the mall. And it covers the area on this slide. So I'm on the next slide, Mr. Mayor. It covers the area on the slide that's kind of this arc in orange on the north and west side of the cemetery. And that is on the mall property. But essentially, when they agreed to this 50 years ago, it was essentially, mall, you don't get to build in this 200-foot wide area, which is approximately 9 acres, which is a substantial amount of land. And so we have been having conversations with the mall, not yet with the cemetery, that is there a way for like a triple win here where we can get some community benefits, even some more green open space, by maybe allowing not development per se, not buildings, but perhaps an above ground stormwater facility. Because one of the other things about the mall property being all asphalt is that there is really inadequate stormwater facilities and currently, and they will need to do a lot more if they are redeveloped, if they redevelop kind of that northern area. So it would benefit them because it's something they need to provide, but above ground is cheaper than below ground. It would benefit the cemetery potentially by adding more of a green buffer around the cemetery. And it would benefit the community if, because above ground stormwater facilities can actually serve multiple purposes, provide open space, pedestrian access, and all those kinds of things, as well as habitat. And so it's
Susan, can you explain why, if the whole thing is already one big impervious surface, why the mall would need to do more stormwater treatment?
So when they
does?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So if they were to redevelop this area that I'm circling with my cursor, which is kind of, do you know where the JCPenney site is, Mr. Mayor? Because I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yep, absolutely. I actually can't. I got the slides back for a moment, but they're gone again. So,
okay.
But I do know where the JCPenney site is.
So if they were to redevelop this area around the JCPenney site, that would actually trigger them having to meet current stormwater standards, which are much more rigorous than the standards that they developed under when they built the mall 50 years ago. So it would trigger them having to do a lot. And that's why that would be kind of the impetus where they'd have to do something. And given that they can't build in this area around the cemetery, they can't use that to put buildings on. But they would have to do stormwater. Might that not be a good place to put the stormwater? Did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Susan, Councilor Newton, I have a quick question.
Sure.
And you may not be to the point where we have the answer to this yet, but I was interested in your chart that talked about what's flexible in terms of types of housing, and the denser, taller developments, what didn't seem to be as feasible. But in this area, are we talking about going pretty tall, or?
Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about semi-Pearl District densities there, but not in the other part of Metzger. I mean, I know you're not there yet, but that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yes. So
okay.
Right now, the zoning for this area allows buildings up to 200 feet tall. Obviously, that's not what we have, but it currently is allowed. And not that I'm saying that we're going to get 200-foot tall buildings in this area, but similar to the Sears redevelopment project, it looks like the mall, and currently even our code somewhat requires more dense development than currently exists here. So yeah, we're looking, this is where we're expecting to see, and there's the potential for a lot more vertical development.
And Councillor Shaw's got a question as well, Susan.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Susan. You mentioned the full acreage is about 100 acres. What is that portion by J.C. Penney's that would be the Pearl-esque like? Do you know what that acreage amount is?
I'm guessing, I don't know for sure. I'm guessing maybe 25-ish acres. Just in kind of parsing it out in my head. It might be, maybe it's more like 15. I could get you a better number if you really wanted to know.
I'm just curious, given what the acreage is and then what the height would be, but it's no rush.
Okay. Okay, since we're limited on time, I think I need to be wrapping up shortly. Let me move on. So the Nimbus Cascade area, some of the things we've heard, better and safer Highway 217 crossings and access to west for peds and bikes. 217 is just a huge barrier in this area. Also that there's too many vacant buildings, and that Fano Creek is right there, the Fano Creek Trail, but getting there by car from the Metzger community is pretty much the only safe way to go. So people are really wanting better access to that regional trail system, and otherwise believe that, kind of this area is great. It is a great regional location because of the access to 217. So 217 is a barrier, but it also provides that access. So it's a double-edged sword. What we've learned about the Nimbus Cascade area is that there's a strong market demand for new car dealerships, but also small industrial uses. And right now, those are not really allowed. And when I say industrial uses, I'm not talking about like some, kind of a coal plant or anything like that, nothing heavy industrial, but even light industrial is not allowed, which would include things like microbreweries and caterers are not currently allowed in a big part of this area. So that's something that we want to look at. But this area is actually home to many, many small businesses. And as you can see by the big red X's on the right-hand side, there's currently a lot of vacant buildings. There's many non-conforming businesses, as I kind of mentioned before, and there's also really limited connectivity because of Fano Creek, because of the heavy rail, and because of Highway 217. So those are definitely constraints for this area. And moving to the next slide, Mr. Mayor, that should be all pink and blue. So some of the things that we want to ask the community and also be asking you is, what can we do to better support small business development in this area based on existing improvements, and how can we better support incremental site improvements? Should we be allowing some of these industrial uses that I described that would be really compatible, that wouldn't have negative impacts, in this area? And specifically, should we be allowing car dealerships in certain locations that we actually believe are hostile to pedestrians, which is up here specifically, and this is to Councillor Newton's question earlier, it's specifically up here at the Shoals and Cascade and Highway 217 intersection, that there's just a pedestrian desert around this interchange that's not going to change. And so we actually think that there's merit, just to looking at and to asking the community what they feel about car dealerships in this area, because they're not currently allowed. We still believe that Greenberg has the potential to be much more pedestrian friendly, and especially because this green area down here by Greenberg Road that I'm circling, that's the future site of, Bagan Park improvements. So we definitely want to keep that in mind. And then in terms of the kinds of things we want to ask the community about in terms of transportation is, and this is the next slide, Mr. Mayor, that there is an existing planned crossing over Highway 217, the heavy rail line as well, from the mall site to Nimbus, where Nimbus dead ends. That is actually a project that's in our current transportation system plan. We're kind of wondering if that's actually the best project. Like, who does that serve? serve our needs now? And so the red arrows are about looking at other ways to overcome that Highway 217 barrier. So we want to look at other locations, and we want to ask the community about, if these crossings existed, like, which one would you prefer? Like, where do you want to get to that you can't get to now because, and especially by ped and bike specifically, because you don't want to go through the Greenberg interchange. Like, where do you want to get to that you're getting in your car to get to now, that if there was better and safer, more comfortable ped bike facilities, what's important to you, and where are you trying to get to? And you can see here in this slide that if you can get people over Highway 217, Fano Creek Trail access and Tigard Street Heritage Trail access is right there, as well as future Bagan Park improvements, which is the green area just next to the label for the Tigard Street Heritage Trail access. So we really want to ask the community about, what they think is important. Obviously, Highway 217 crossings are super, super expensive, so there's a lot to consider there. So just in closing, and I'm moving on to the slide called Closing Remarks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to remind folks, when we come back eventually with recommendations, just as a reminder, based on the diversity of the existing development and what we're seeing from what the community wants and what the market and feasibility analysis is showing us, is that we're moving away from a vision of this vertical mixed-use development everywhere and really focusing that happening on the mall property. So we're talking about many different small changes in all these different areas, and focusing on those changes that can really, be achievable and really support, reflect where the market is going, but also reflect what the community wants to be more walkable, healthy, and equitable. As for next steps, we're going to get lots of community feedback. So I'm moving on, Mr. Mayor, to the slide that has all sorts of little talking bubbles. We're planning a big community engagement push in the spring, so kind of mid-March to April. And so I will definitely be letting you know about that. And next steps also involve us eventually packaging all of this up and bringing it to you for your consideration as a legislative package that would update our comprehensive plan for sure and make other recommendations about changing the code and the zoning. I do also want to say just really briefly that because there's such a strong desire from certain businesses, certain car dealerships, that you will likely see us in June with a very targeted, specific request to change the zoning for those sites that are on the Shoals Ferry Cascade northern end of things that I was talking about for where the car dealers want to locate. Because of their timelines, we've agreed to take a legislative amendment through the process, and really it's a policy decision. We'll bring to you kind of what we think are the drawbacks and the benefits of having car dealerships in this location. We'll also bring to you what the community, what the community input is when we ask the community that question. But that's going to be ahead of a larger, broader package of changes just because of their timelines. So just as a heads up, expect to see us in June with that very specific, consideration. And I think with that, I am done. So I will unshare my screen so I can see your faces again.
I hope that last comment about whatever's coming back with the car dealership recommendations has a lot of thought that goes into the form and what, I was actually speaking with Mayor Beatty this morning from Beaverton, and we were kind of talking about her city's car dealership situation and how, we probably need to be encouraging them to use their space differently and not have massive car lots.
Yes.
And so I hope if something's coming, I guess I'll just say this. If something's coming, I hope those kinds of things are addressed or at least considered in the staff work that's done.
Absolutely. And that's a great comment because right now, because all of these properties are not only within the regional center, they're within our regional center plan district in our code. And we have much higher design standards in the plan district code as a result of it being the regional center. And so the requirement is for basically everything to be in a structure. So, and we've actually already seen a design proposal, very conceptual by BMW, and that's exactly what they're doing. So it would not be a surface parking lot, and that's something that we would definitely not, that we would carry forward, that we wouldn't change that part of it. And that's all true actually for all the development in this area, that we wouldn't back down from having good form to support, the pedestrian experience. Any other comments or questions?
I was just going to say, comments or questions from the council. I will also just do a quick time check. I want you to have the time with Susan, and I've certainly asked a lot of questions. It's 7:13. We have not gotten to council liaison reports, and I know we're supposed to be off the line by 7:20. So questions for Susan or comments?
I unmuted myself again. Councillor Newton, and thanks for the presentation, Susan. I was here when we did the plan 20 years ago, and to be looking at something that really reflects the opportunity to take what works for people there and make it better, I think is a better approach. So, and I think we're in a good situation with the housing choices because of the middle market housing. I grew up in Garden Home just north of there, and there's a lot of large lots and some kind of small homes on some of those lots. So there's some really interesting, intriguing opportunities to do some stuff with affordable housing that's not going to dramatically change the character of that neighborhood. So I think this is a good approach. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Thanks.
Thank you.
And then I just have a real quick question. Maybe this is something I just don't know because I'm not an adult, but why would people want car dealerships? I don't understand that.
Well, people do still buy cars. So that's a very simplistic answer. But from a city's perspective, I can answer that one of the things that we look at is employment. So for example, just to highlight the differences between, so one of the locations where the car dealership is wanting to locate is an old Orchard Supply store. So it's what we consider big box retail, and it may be employed 20 people. A car dealership, on the other hand, especially if it has service facilities as well, could employ, I think it's 5 times more people than that, maybe even more. So, and then there's also, in terms of from the city's perspective, in terms of somebody wanting to redevelop that property and not having it kind of languish, there's tax revenue implications as well. But certainly, there are drawbacks to a car dealership. It means that, especially a new one, it likely means that, that'll change the character of the area in some respects. Even though in my response to Mr. Mayor about we're still going to insist on good urban form that's very pedestrian friendly, but it's just in an area that's kind of pedestrian hostile. So, it's like, do we give up on that ever, having different kind of development, or not? So we'll be presenting like all the different perspectives, again, the benefits and the drawbacks, but there is the employment side of things that is quite a benefit. And in this location where we might not see other kinds of good development besides this low scale big box retail, it's just something to consider.
I was going to just answer Youth Councilor Calderon's too. I think with people, they love to still touch, smell, feel, vehicle. So they get there, they test drive it, they see it. It's there on the lot where they can buy it and drive away with it right then and there, rather than ordering it, wait weeks. So people are impulsive; they like it then and there and want it and want to test it. So I do like how off of I'm going blank off the road, but there's that CarMax where they have that parking structure. So I presume that that's what we'll be looking at with similar things where it'll be go up and have those multiple layers that they can do it, or something similar to the Range Rover one where at least it will be screened a little bit, so it's not going to be just a eyesore of a parking lot.
Correct. Absolutely.
anything else? And I don't have video from everyone. I have still photos. So if you're trying to speak and wave your hand, I can't see it. So speak up. Anyone? All right, Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Good to meet you, Counselor Shaw. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, we have a couple of minutes, and I will let anyone that wants to speak on anything kind of time critical for council liaison reports. I do want to quickly let you all know that the Oregon Mayors Association, which I am now on their board of directors, and the League of Oregon Cities are both basically taking the governor to task on her evidence to continue supporting the ban on certain activities in the commercial sector, because when we've asked for evidence, the evidence is not really anything more than just conjecture and best guess and not actual evidence. And so I wanted to just make sure that you all know that's kind of happening pretty quickly, and I anticipate there may even be a question or an opportunity for each individual elected official to either join or sign on to a communication asking the governor and OHA to reconsider based on a lack of evidence, and or encouraging her to be making decisions that are based on evidence. So I just wanted to let you all know that. That's my only time critical thing. I've got 3 other things, but they can wait. Does anyone else have any time critical council liaison updates?
I was going to just jump in one thing. To piggyback off that, I know that today the governor did the revision for indoor fitness and so forth with a low number of only max of 6 people over 500 square feet. So I presume that the league and, like you said, the mayors and so forth will continue on that one, because that doesn't really help bowling alleys or gyms when you're only limited to 6 people in the building.
Yeah, it's at least a start and an acknowledgement. So it's nice to see some movement.
Yeah, Tiger Bowl can open on Friday and have a max of 6 people in there
at a time.
Yes.
Other time sensitive report outs. Council President Lube, anything?
No, nothing time sensitive.
Councilor Shaw?
No, nothing time sensitive, Mayor.
Youth Councilor Calderon?
Nothing time sensitive.
Councilor Newton?
Nothing that can't wait.
Okay, I will ask that we hold the rest so we can honor our technology folks and their 10-minute break request. So we will convene back at 7:30. Thank you all.
joins, you're free to go.
Okay. Mike, you don't show her online, do you? Call this City Council and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. Deputy Recorder Patton, please call roll.
Council President Liu.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
Mayor Snyder.
Here.
Youth Councilor Calderon.
Here.
Councilor Goodhouse.
Here.
And Councilor Newton.
Here.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask everybody to mute their mics. And Mr. Nollop, please put the flag up on the screen and participate on your own. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to non-agenda items. Council or staff, any non-agenda items?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Staff do not have any non-agenda items this evening.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. Written public comment was due by 4:30 p.m. today. Call-in questions will be taken via telephone by calling 503-966-4101 now. The call-in number is posted on the screen. And we had two written comments, which we'll get to in a moment. So, Interim City Manager Nyland, did you have any follow-up to previous public comment?
I did not have any follow-up from previous comments.
All right. Deputy Recorder Patton, I see two written comments. One was about sidewalks on Fonner Street from Wendy Anderson, and another was about home occupation permits from Chris Brown. Council, please make sure you review those. Staff, is there any follow-up on either one of these or recommendation on follow-up? I guess sidewalks on Fonner, we are desperately in need of sidewalks on Fonner between 115th and Walnut. I'm certain that's true, along with, hundreds of miles of streets, unfortunately, but I see that note. I take it that will go to engineering to at least evaluate whether there's something particularly dangerous given what was said in the communication.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Both of these comments we will route to the appropriate departments to get responses to.
Okay. All right, thank you. And we will move on to phone-in public comment. Mr. Nollop, do we have any callers?
Mr. Mayor, at this time, there are no callers in the queue.
All right. We'll move on to item number 4, which is Local Contract Review Board. Consider contract award for financial operations technical assistance to Smith Wagger Brucker Consulting LLC. Analyst Moody.
Good evening, Mayor Schneider and councilors. I'm Christine Moody, Purchasing Manager. We are here tonight asking for your approval to award a contract to Smith, Wagger, Brooker Consulting to provide technical consulting services to the city's financial operations division. The City of Tigard has begun a process of implementing a new enterprise resource planning solution. The beginning of the project includes Tyler Technologies Munis financial management solution that will replace the existing Springbrook financial system. As such, the finance staff have had to divert their time to focus on Munis project and will need assistance from an outside consultant to fill in the gaps of regular work that cannot be completed by staff. Tigard Public Contracting Rule 1070 allows for the determination of a sole source, and for this contract, the sole source is supported in the fact that Miss Debbie Smith Wagger served as the city's Assistant Finance Director from December 2008 to March of 2015. This experience provides her with a solid understanding of city operations as well as what makes Tigard unique. Prior to working for the city, Ms. Smith Wagger worked for Springbrook and has developed an understanding of the software. She knows how to operate the software and what happens in the background to ensure that the steps taken will be the correct ones. She was also previously employed by Moss Adams, who is currently acting as Tigard's external auditor. With this institutional knowledge and staying current on accounting standards, she is uniquely qualified to assist with implementing any new requirements. And she has existing knowledge of Tigard's allocation model used in the budgeting process. Staff recommends approval of a contract with Smith Wagger Brooker Consulting LLC in the amount of $300,000 for a contract term to end December 31st, 2022. In addition, Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director, is here to discuss how this contract fits in with the city's Total Tyler project.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director, and I just want to take a few extra minutes this evening to talk about the Tyler project as a whole. I'm here tonight because this is the first of what could be several contracts you will see over the next few years related to backfilling work of Tigard staff so that our staff can focus on the implementation of the Total Tyler ERP. Guided by both the city's performance audit presented to Council on October 1st, 2019, and the IT strategic plan presented to Council on February 18th, 2020. Tigard made the decision to undertake a multi-year project to update, consolidate, and improve the city's aging enterprise technology systems. This decision is included in the funding in our current fiscal year 2020-2021 adopted budget, and as presented when Council approved the contract with Tyler Technologies on September 22nd, 2020, this is a project that is expected to take approximately 4 years. Work on the finance system portion of the project started in October. HR actually kicked off today, and the Public Works Asset Management System will start in the next 45 days. The work of the project takes a three-part team. The team is made up of IT professionals from Tyler Technologies first. Second is Tigard's own IT department, which has been bolstered over the last 2 years in preparation of this and other projects. The third portion of the team are the staff from the departments that will use the software, and this is why I'm discussing the project in relation to tonight's contract. In order for department staff like those in finance to work on software implementation, the city will need to bring in resources to backfill for those staff on a limited duration basis. This backfill is needed to ensure that the business of the city continues during the software implementation. These department resources will take the form of temporaries, limited duration FTE, and contracts such as the one that's before you this evening. Over the next few budget cycles, one-time resources are planned in order to hold the line on this implementation. So, while this may be the first contract related to Tyler implementation backfill work that has come before Council, it likely will not be the last. Now, if there are any questions about this particular contract and how it will help backfill the work of the city's financial operations, Jared Isaacson, Assistant Finance Director, is managing this work and contract, and he's here to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for giving me a couple moments to put this in context of the overall Untitled Chapter project. So
Toby, I think before we go there, I think it'd be good to just clarify, given the description of, Ms. Smith-Wagger's expertise, and, I interacted with her for, nearly a decade while she worked at the city. But I think given that relationship, it's important to make sure that when we're awarding a $300,000 contract or $300,000+ contract, that it's clear that, at least to the public, this is for a scope of work and work that will be completed, and not just fixed amount of money that doesn't require effort and certain results. And it might be helpful for you to describe the nature of whether that work will be billed hourly and not to exceed the amount, or exactly what. Because if I'm a member of the public watching this right now, that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up a little bit.
Absolutely. Why don't we first start with Jared describing the nature of the work that Smith-Wagger Brucker is going to be undertaking on behalf of the city, and then we'll see if you have any additional questions.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Jared Isaacson, the Assistant Finance Director for the city. Some of the items that Debbie will be helping out with is audit preparation and organization, year-end work, as well as audit work paper preparation. She'll be assisting in updating some of select of the finance policies. She will be assisting in the organization of the city's grants and looking to make sure that we've got everything captured for entry into the new Tyler system. She'll be performing high-level reconciliation work on a quarterly and or monthly basis. And she'll be assisting in other high-level finance work and reporting. So this is a not to exceed amount for this contract. Debbie is billed out at an hourly rate, and we anticipate utilizing her between 15 to 20 hours a week. It'll be more so during the year-end and audit process, as Amy Lawson, our accounting supervisor, who usually assists me in the year-end and audit prep, will be focusing on the Tyler project. I'll need someone to help assist in that work so that we can finish it timely and accurately. Any other questions?
Not for me. Other council questions or a motion?
There's no additional questions, Mayor. I'm happy to make a motion.
Please do.
I move to approve the contract award for financial operations technical assistance to Smith-Wagger Brucker Consulting LLC, and authorize the city manager to execute all documents necessary to effectuate the same.
I'll second the motion.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Council President Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Shaw?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Councilor Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Yes.
Okay, motion's adopted unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5 on the agenda, which is a local contract review board action considering contract awards for on-call engineering and related services. Ms. Moody.
Good evening, Mayor Snyder. Yes, I've got 3 items tonight, so you got me right up front. Christine Moody, Purchasing Manager. So we're here tonight asking for your approval to award 41 professional services on-call contracts in 12 categories of work that will support the city's capital improvement plan. Tigard has a robust capital improvement plan and has an ongoing need for a wide range of consulting services associated with water, sewer, stormwater, parks, public facilities and street systems infrastructure. The city has an existing set of on-call contracts for similar service categories that all expire January 31st, 2021. These contracts have been regularly and effectively used and provide services in support of delivery many small projects in the capital improvement plan. On October 2020, the city issued a formal qualifications-based request for proposal to select qualified firms in the work categories of utility project planning and engineering, transportation project design and engineering, land survey services, soils and geotechnical engineering, traffic transportation systems engineering and analysis, stream channel outfall engineering analysis, environmental permitting support services, landscape architecture services, special inspection and testing services, vacuum excavation services for design, and development plan review services. On November 20th, 2020, 52 proposals were received. A selection committee of 11 reviewers scored the responses based on minimum and general qualifications, understanding and project management approach, and category-specific company qualifications of technical personnel. Staff is recommending awarding a total of 41 contracts, anywhere from 2 to 5 in each category. Of the 41 contracts, there are 6 contractors certified through the Oregon Certification for Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity as either a disadvantaged, minority, or women business enterprise, emerging small business, or service-disabled veteran business. The proposed contracts are of an on-call in nature, in which services are requested as the need arises. Therefore, there is no guarantee as the actual amount of work assigned under any one contract. As with the previous on-call contracts, engineering staff will work to utilize as many of the selected contractors as possible over the duration of the contract term. Contractors will be selected for task orders based on specific scope, cost, and timeline needs for each project. Work performed under these contracts must be authorized via a written task order, and approved budget must be available. Compensation for each task order will be determined through negotiation with the contractor based on the scope of work, the estimated hours for performance of the work, and the contractor's established rates. The maximum compensation for a particular task order cannot exceed $250,000. For larger design projects and major studies estimated over $250,000, the city will issue a standalone RFP. I will now turn this over to Lori Feha, city engineer, to tell you what types of projects are typical of these on-calls and how the engineering division makes use of these contracts.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, Mayor and City Council. I'm Lori Feha, the city engineer. So I assume everybody can hear me. Thank you. So I just want to say that these contracts are incredibly helpful to conduct our large array of engineering, design, and construction tasks. We tried out this process 4 years ago. Those contracts are now expiring, and it was great success. So I'm very excited to hopefully have a new set of on-call contracts put into place, this time for a higher limit so we can do even more work under them. I'll mention the type of work and then why it's so helpful to have these contracts in place. The type of work can be, it's what I call the small to medium sized projects. And it can be anywhere from design of a parks or trails project. It could be design of a lining of a sewer line. It could be design of a sidewalk infill project, a space remodel in a city building, water valves and pipelines, infrastructure master plans, traffic safety analyses, property surveys, if the city, for instance, is going to buy a piece of property. All types of work, and it's really awesome. We've actually expanded the list of types of work this time based on the success last time. That's why there's more categories and there's more consultants being selected this time around. If we didn't have these on-calls and we needed to do a normal solicitation process for each project, it typically takes, on average, at least 3 months to do a request for proposals selection process where you write a proposal, you advertise it, you receive and review proposals, you might you review those with a panel, you might ask for costs, and then maybe even an interview, and then you have to come individually to council for contracts. That for the amount of projects that we do, if we had to do that 3+ month process for all of those, it would really slow us down and we'd be able to achieve a lot less work. So I'm hoping you'll be supportive of this. We did, I think, a really good job of using the vast majority of the firms that we had on calls last time around. We will work very hard to do the same. We had 28 firms and we used 23 of them. We issued over 70 task orders over a 4-year period. We issued work anywhere from $2,500 to $99,000. This time around, again, instead of $100,000 being our cap, because you approved new rules, it can now be up to $250,000. So we'll be able to do even more. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about these contracts.
Thank you, Lori. Councilor.
Sorry, that's Councilor Newton. Just a clarification, Ms. Veha. I was a little bit concerned about the number, but you're saying that the addition from 28 firms to 41 is because you've expanded the categories. Is that correct? So you've got more categories? Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Councilor Shaw.
Great, thank you as well, both Christine and Lori. Out of the 41 firms, you had mentioned there were some minority, women-owned, disadvantaged businesses. Is there a percentage that you have within that mix? Or is it dependent on category?
It's 6 out of 41.
We had, yeah, 6 out of 41, and they were all in different categories. We had a woman-owned firm and utility project planning. And did you want me to go through the different ones?
No, I thought I heard 6, but wasn't sure. So thank you, Christine.
Yep, there was 6 out of the 41 that were being awarded.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I'll move to.
Sorry, Council President Lube, go ahead.
No, I was just going to move to approve the contract awards for on-call engineering and related services and authorize the city manager to execute all documents necessary to effectuate the same.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Shaw?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Councilor Goodhouse?
Yes.
Councilor Newton?
Very well. Yes, sorry.
All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And Ms. Moody, you want to move on to item number 6, which is Local Contract Review Board. Consider contract award for the Kruger Creek stabilization to AKS Engineering and Forestry, LLC.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Schneider, councilors. We are here tonight asking for your approval to award a contract to AKS Engineering and Forestry for the Kruger Creek stabilization in the amount of $588,866. The city issued a qualification-based request for proposals seeking services of a consulting firm with demonstrated success in project research and data collection, design, survey, engineering design, and construction services. And on October 6th, 3 proposals were received. A selection committee reviewed and scored the proposals on project understanding and approach, proposers' qualifications, and qualifications of project manager and key staff. After careful consideration, including interviews and price proposal evaluation from the top 2 ranked firms. Staff recommends that the city award the contract to AKS Engineering and Forestry. Andrew Newberry, principal engineer, will manage the contract and resulting work products and key deliverables. And I'm going to hand it over to Andy to talk a little bit more about the project.
Thanks, Christine, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. Again, I'm Andy Newberry, Principal Engineer in the Public Works Department. I just want to talk briefly about the project and the project scope. So this project is looking at Kruger Creek near its headwaters up Bull Mountain, downstream to Greenfield Drive, and from Greenfield Drive down to Gardy Street. And this section of stream has experienced some severe erosion. And this is mainly due to adjacent housing developments being built before Clean Water Services had detention requirements. So during a storm event, the peak runoff rate or the flow rate is a lot higher in developed sites due to asphalt and roof areas. So without having this flow detained, Kruger Creek has been experiencing much higher flow rates over the years, which has resulted in this erosion. So the consultant, AKS, will be designing stream stabilization measures to address the erosion problems. And just to briefly talk about one of those measures is installing a high flow bypass pipe. So the consultant is able to determine how much flow entered that creek prior to development. So any flows that are above that amount will enter into this high flow bypass pipe, reducing the erosive flows into the creek. The consultant will also be looking at areas where the existing slope needs to be stabilized. Along the Greenfield to Gardy stretch, there are several homes that are right at the top of the bank, so we need to make sure those areas are stabilized. Another issue with erosion has led to unstable slopes adjacent to the creek, which actually resulted in the city purchasing a home, which is commonly referred as the Rankin House. It also has deposited a lot of sediment downstream in Jack Park, causing some flooding of the trails. So just talk about one of the goals of this project, and this is related to the Rankin House, is one of the goals is to get that Rankin House sold and back into private ownership. Another note is we also have a sanitary sewer main that runs along the creek corridor. So we also need to protect that too, because could be some issues with that later on with more slope failures. So that's just a brief overview of the project. Just one last thing I'd like to mention is this project is a high priority in our adopted stormwater master plan. And I'm going to turn this over to our city engineer, Lori Fea, to discuss that further. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Christine. So this is Lori Fea again, city engineer. So Andy did a really great job introducing the project. I think many on city council have heard of this project before. It was one of the primary reasons why not only we completed and you adopted a master plan, but we also asked for a rate increase for the citizens of Tigard to help support solving the extensive erosion problems we have in some of our creeks. So this project is really kind of a kickoff, I'll say, to utilizing the new funding that this is providing and allowing us to fix a really disturbing problem. I know we took Councillor Goodhouse out there before. He's seen how deep some of these eroding stream channels are. And I'm really excited to be able to tackle this one and get it resolved. So we just wanted to note that this is, we're being able to do this project because of the rates that are being provided by the citizens of Tigard, and we thank everyone for that. So if there's any questions, go for it.
All right, council, questions or a motion?
I have a question. So I know previous talks we've talked about filling that in and doing a false bottom, but it sounds like maybe now it's going to be looked at doing a kind of a bypass pipe or something, or is that kind of a solution and it's still looking at bringing that up and doing a false bottom in there?
Did you want to address that, Andy?
Yes, thanks, Councilor Goodhouse. Yes, both options. So we actually had AKS do a preliminary study on options to fix the creek or what we can do to mitigate this erosion. And one of those options that they came up with is high flow bypass pipe. And looking at cost estimates, it seems like this is a very feasible way of addressing that. But we're also going to be doing some improvements to the creek also, putting in some stream bed material, putting in some check dams, even some beaver analog dams. So we're looking at doing a scenario of both.
And would that also include, I remember being out there, and also part of the conversation was that bank that a lot of people would throw their grass clippings or so forth, and there wasn't vegetation on the bank. So would that also include replanting vegetation on the bank so there's more of a support system on there, or root system?
Yes, yeah, there'll be the planning's going on, yes, and that's being part of the mitigation of working in a vegetated corridor, that we need to bring up that corridor to a good condition. So that will include plantings, yes.
Thank you.
All right, other questions, or is there a motion?
I can go ahead and make a motion, Mayor. Councilor Shaw, I move to approve the contract award for Kruger Creek stabilization to AKS Engineering and Forestry LLC, and authorize the city manager to execute all documents necessary to effectuate the same.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please conduct a roll call vote.
Council President Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Shaw?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Councilor Goodhouse?
Yes.
And Councilor Newton?
Yes.
All right, motion's adopted unanimously. Let's move on to item number 7, which is a public hearing considering a resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2021 second quarter budget supplemental. I will open the public hearing. Anyone that wants to offer testimony will be allowed to do so. Written comments were due by 4:30 p.m. today, this afternoon. Those wishing to testify via phone can call in at 503-966-4101 and be put in the queue. Senior Management Analyst Kang, staff report, please.
Steve, you might be on mute still.
Sorry about that. Can everyone see the presentation?
We can.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name is Steve King, a senior management analyst from Finance and Information Services. Tonight I'm here to present the fiscal year 2021 second quarter budget supplemental. Before I go into the details, one item to note is that we have a walk-on amendment, which I will describe at the end. You should have the revised materials, including the amendment, from the City Recorder's office. So going into community development. So first request from community development is another round of the Tiger Cares Business Assistance Program to win additional federal grants. This request will capitalize the COVID-19 Business Assistance Grant Program that's been in place since last year when the pandemic started. The second request is the addition of the 0.25 FTE in the building division to assist the increased workload for building permit staff in processing building permits for several new housing types approved by the city. City management. City management request is from HR. In fiscal year 2020, City completed a range placement study and developed a pay matrix to ensure consistent application of the range placement in order to maintain compliance with the Oregon Equal Pay Act. The one area did not get addressed at that time was the supervisory group. To ensure the compliance with the law, the city contracted HR consulting firm to do a full review of our supervisory classifications, and that resulted in adjustments to 6 supervisory positions in the city. Next is Finance and Information Services. Finance and Information Services has 2 requests and 1 non-budgetary impact item. The first request is a membership sponsorship to various partner organizations that focus on minority and women-owned small businesses as part of the city's anti-racism action plan. This will allow us to gain access to their membership, which will then allow us to engage with associated businesses. The second request is a right-of-way associate management consulting fee. This request is just to record the expenditures in the same fund where the revenue is also being recorded. The last bullet item is a non-budgetary impact item. This is a reduction of computer support technician and increased managed help desk coverage. So Tigers IT has been utilizing managed help desk services, and with recent contract with Bridgetech, we're able to eliminate this position. All salaries and benefits associated with this position will be used in the current and subsequent fiscal years to fund the existing contract with the contracted firm. Police Department. So Police Department has 4 requests. First request is the result of the TPOA collective bargaining agreement. And second request is the addition of the police dog in the K9 unit. This request is funded by the private donations. The third request is a reevaluation of the transit police program. Based on the previous IGA with TriMet, Tiger Police has dedicated a total of 6.0 FTE in this program, but once this IGA expired, Tiger Police Department reevaluated in the program and decided that to reduce the commitment to no more than 3.0 FTE. This would be 2 officers and 1 sergeant positions. The reduction in staff comes with the reduction in reimbursement revenues from TriMet, which will make this request a 0 net impact to the general fund. The last request is a recognition of the 2 federal COVID-19 grants. These grants allow the police department to purchase equipment and supplies to support our operations during the pandemic, and hire consultants to develop training for members of the Public Safety Advisory Board. Public Works. Public Works has 2 requests. One is a carry forward to recognize the delivery of the 2 pickup trucks for the street maintenance division. These trucks were budgeted in FY20, but arrived late due to a fire at the plant that resulted in manufacturing delay. Second request is a replacement of the excavator with a model better suited to complete the work of the pavement management program. This excavator purchase will be split between 75% street maintenance and 25% gas tax fund. Initially, this purchase was targeted to be completed in fiscal year 22. This expedited purchase will allow the city to avoid rental of the mini excavator for any work to be done in FY 2021. CIP has 6 requests, and of that, I'll mention 2 items. So first one is the Oak Street property acquisition. The acquisition of this property is identified in the city's stormwater master plan. This property actually sits dangerously close to Ash Creek and the stream bank that has been eroding. Additional floodplain storage is needed at this location to slow runoff from upstream development and help reduce downstream erosion. The second one I'll mention is the Pruing Street sidewalk infill. This is a combination of a carry forward and new ask. The new ask portion is to cover the unforeseen right-of-way expenses, increasing design, staff time, and construction cost. The city is planning to submit a request for Washington County Community Development Block Grant to cover part of the project increase, but this will have to go through an approval process in the spring. So currently we're unsure at this time to whether we're going to get that increase or not. Lastly, on the amendment, in the original submission, it included a request for non-budgetary impact FTE increase from HR. Specifically, it was a request for a 0.10 FTE increase for the HR specialist. This position was originally approved for 0.50 FTE, but was able to fill the position at lower level HR intern, which made it budget neutral. The increase in FTE was requested based on workload assessment that was done in November of last year. However, since the submission, due to the shift in police department's hiring needs, it is determined that the FTE increase was no longer necessary. Thus, HR is withdrawing the request for the FTE increase. So in summary, the fiscal year 2021 second quarter budget supplemental will increase the budget by roughly $2.6 million. The increase in program expenditure budget is largely supported through various federal, state grants, as well as unanticipated funding balance, beginning fund balances, and contingency. The supplemental will actually change the increase the reserves of the city by $15,800. That is end of the presentation, and staff is recommending approval of the resolution with the proposed amendment. Now, at this time, myself and the department staff is available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
All right, so we need to limit this to questions, not discussion or debate. So any staff questions, I'm sorry, any questions of staff?
I think the mayor's screen froze, or he might have got disconnected.
Yeah. Correct. Let's hold on and give him a chance to reconnect.
Okay.
He's having a tough technology day.
That was my day earlier.
I think it rotates around.
Yeah.
It's not me for once.
And I'm back. And I see Councilor Newton has her hand up.
If I can unmute myself, I did figure out how to raise my hand. Thank you for that great presentation, Mr. Kang. Most of my questions were answered. I just wanted to clarify one thing. I noticed in the materials that were submitted, the canine dog, the dog and the equipment and all the necessary materials for the dog is through a donation. And in the materials, it said that the any additions to the staffing needs are, sort of supplemental. So essentially, we've got an officer who is now assuming canine duty, and that's why any associated costs are that the city incurs are fairly minimal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Portion is
All right, other council questions? Councilor Newton, did you have more? Can folks still hear me?
Yeah. No more questions, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Goodhouse, anything? As far as questions? Okay. I don't see anyone else raising their hands, so we will move on to public testimony. Mr. Nullup, do we have any callers in the queue?
No callers in the queue, Mr. Mayor.
And City Recorder Patton, did we have any written comments? I didn't see any, but did we have any?
No, no written comment, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Probably no staff response to testimony. I will close the public hearing and we'll move on to council consideration of resolution number 21-02. Discussion?
I move to approve resolution number 21-02.
I second the motion.
Mr. Mayor, Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director. Could we rehab that amendment with, could we have that motion as amended, please?
Yeah, can we make sure that we're clear on what the amendment is? And I ask because Mr. Kang referenced the fact that we received supplemental material from the city recorder, and I'm not sure I know exactly what that is, and I don't recall seeing it in a special email. So what is it that's being referenced? And maybe Deputy Recorder Patton, can you clarify whether or where we find that supplemental material?
I have the updated resolution. I haven't sent it to the council, but I would be happy to.
Okay, Mr. LaFrance, maybe you can summarize again what since we haven't seen that, what the amendments are?
The amendment would be that there was in your original materials, there are two non-budgetary impact items. One of them was to increase an FTE or a position by 0.1 FTE in human resources. That request has been withdrawn. As Mr. Kang presented in his presentation, the need is no longer there for the additional hours. And so, so the amendment would be to approve the resolution without that change in the FTE.
That's the only change?
That's the only change.
Okay, who made the original motion and do they want to amend it?
Yes, I will amend the motion to exclude the HR request for an FTE adjustment.
So just to clarify, you're moving to approve resolution number 21-02 with the exception of the change in HR FTE. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I can second.
Okay. Any further discussion? We're kind of moving quickly on a fairly significant budget item, so I want to make sure I'm deliberately asking about that point and whether there's any further discussion. Okay, City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 21-02, a resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2021 second quarter budget supplemental, including budget adjustments to Public Works, Policy and Administration, and Community Services as amended.
And a roll call vote, please.
Council President Lube.
Yes.
Councilor Shaw.
Yes.
Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Councilor Goodhouse.
Yes.
Councilor Newton.
Councilor Newton, I don't think we got your vote on the audio there. Sorry.
Still muted, Councilor Newton.
Jeez. Yes?
Thank
Did you
you.
get it? Oh, jeez.
Yes.
Sorry.
All right. Resolution 21-02 is adopted unanimously. We'll move on to item number 8, which is a public hearing to consider a resolution to amend the master fees and charges schedule related to solid waste fee schedules. I will open the public hearing. Anyone that wants to offer testimony will be allowed to do so. Written comments were due by 4:30 p.m. this afternoon, and those wishing to testify via phone can call 503-966-4101 and be put in the queue. Senior Management Analyst Kang, staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Councilors. My name is Steve King, a Senior Management Analyst from Financial Information Services. And tonight I'm here to present the amendment to the city's solid waste master fees and charges schedule. So Pride Disposal and Waste Management, they provide our waste and recycling collection services under a exclusive franchise agreement. And under this agreement, Dropbox delivery and collection services are actually provided in Monday through Friday during normal business hours. And in the past, council have requested they provide this service during weekends. So for this service to be expanded, the franchisees are requesting an additional fee to recover overtime labor cost. So cost of that labor is $50 for a special delivery and collection services, and it will be only for Saturday only. And franchisees are also requesting that the Saturday delivery require 4-day notification. So in addition to that, solid waste haulers requested the clarification on the master fees and charges, and which is the special service fee is per hour, not per occurrence. So those are the changes requested, and staff is recommending to approve the amendment.
Mr. King, I heard you say $50 an hour, but I see the pricing for special services at $82.96. I think
those are different services. The $50 is the weekend special delivery and collection service.
Okay,
and
got it.
Yep.
Sorry, so that's just the addition only is in blue, and something that changed is in red. Is that the difference?
Red is crossed out, so eliminate. Okay. And blue is new additions. Black is existing.
Okay. So this is just the addition of an entire category under Dropbox collection. That's all in blue.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there is this other correction that is clarifying other special fees are not per occurrence, but are per hour. Unless I missed it, I don't think I heard you describe that. Is there something changing there?
Yep, I did describe that shortly. Sorry, I missed it, but yes, that is also there.
Okay.
Can I ask the question of what special service fees are? It feels like everything else is a fairly easy to understand, and special service fees just seems to be a pretty broad category.
Mr. Goodrich, are you available?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. John Goodrich, Executive Manager, Public Works. Yes, so it looked like there was some type of Scribner's error that occurred sometime in the past where hour and occurrence got shifted or something happened where there was a misunderstanding. So I believe that the special fees and charges, that is just to provide a category so that if there is some kind of special service that is not listed in the agreement, which is the municipal code, or within the master fees and charges schedule, that Pride and Waste Management can use that as, to cover that.
So someone wants a service that isn't normally covered by anything else, and they're required to provide it because we don't allow anyone else to provide it. And this gives them sort of a special category to do all other things not otherwise listed. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I believe that's the case. What I think from council's perspective and for Councilor Liu's question, if you would allow us to confer with the franchisees to get a specific definition, and then we'll provide that back to you in a memo. But that's my understanding, but I'd like some clarity on it as well.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to public testimony. Oh, go ahead.
Quick question. If we're unsure what the special fees is and what that change is and what that's going to be, do we have to pass that now, or is that something that we can not pass that until we understand exactly what that covers and what that will be, that will fall into there? I mean, is it something that
I'll
needs to be checked?
step in and say the council has the authority to either pass it or not. So I don't know if that was directed at staff, but I'll step in and say we don't have to pass anything we don't want to pass.
I guess to rephrase that, because I was about to rephrase it, is that something it needs to be changed tonight, or is that something that can be done at a later date?
I'll go ahead and take this, Steve. This fee has been on the master fees and charges schedule for quite some time. What we're doing is clarifying occurrence, which would mean a one-time thing for $82.56 or what the dollar amount is there, compared to an hourly rate. Both Dean and Kristen, when they saw the master fees and charges schedule, they had called us on it and asked why it said occurrence and not hourly. And so again, it's for a special fee and charge for equipment, labor, etc. I believe that's how the $82 is created.
Is this already in their contract, John? Is that also part of the situation? Like this is in their agreement, but it's not reflected properly here?
So in the municipal code, I don't believe that we have definitions for each of the categories within the master fees and charges schedule. I think there's just a historical issue there as such. But I think it's a very valid question the council is asking, and I think that that we can resolve it by conferring with the franchisees and getting a specific definition. And then perhaps what we should do is make a change to the municipal code and provide that definition in there so that everybody understands what the special fees and charges are for, and that it's based on an hourly.
All right, so Councilor Goodhouse, do you have other questions? Because we can have a discussion after we're done with the public hearing about the merit of all that, but that's probably not appropriate for now.
No other questions.
All right, other questions while we're in the public hearing? All right, public testimony. City Recorder Patton, were there any written testimonies?
No written comment was received.
Mr. Nollup, are there any callers in the queue?
Mr. Mayor, there are no callers in the queue.
I'm kind of disappointed by that because the Saturday weekend pickup was something that the public brought to us. So I was hoping someone would call in and support it, but I understand they have not. So there's no staff response to testimony. I'll close the public hearing. Council consideration of resolution number 21-03. Why don't we start with Councilor Goodhouse's discussion about the changes for the special service fees. And I guess that to some extent that started with Council President Lube. Sorry, that it's attributed to both of you, but why don't we just try to resolve that now? Because if that means that it needs to come back at a later date, then let's figure that out and not move forward. So what does everyone have to say about that? Councilor Goodhouse, you want to start?
Yes, that's why it was sensitive. I believe on the special service fees, if it's not a time sensitive, that we bring that part back when we have a better understanding of what it covers. and what the difference. And most likely it's special services, but if that's changing from recurrence to hourly, that could be a change, or it'd be better just to spell out what it is. So I think if we move forward tonight on with the other part, make the other change, but just leave that part out with the special fees.
Council President Lube.
I apologize. I think Councilor Goodhouse I was having a little trouble hearing some of what he was saying. Maybe it was my connection. But I am comfortable moving forward with the $50 one-time special Dropbox fee for the weekend services. But I think we should get some clarification on what special service fees are, especially going from an occurrence to an hour, just so we understand what we're voting on and we're passing.
All right. Councilor Shaw, do you have other thoughts or want to say the same thing?
Yeah, I do not have any additional thoughts, and I would agree with Council President Lube and Councilor Goodhouse.
All right. I see Mr. LaFrance raising his hand.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor and Council, Toby LaFrance, Finance and Information Services Director. And I recognize that we're past the procedural point. I was diving into email as you were asking questions, asking for clarification. I was able to find an email from Kristen Lechner from Pride Disposal from November 17th of 2020. And it says, and I'll just read it, just for clarification, it's our understanding that the fee is really per hour, not per occurrence. It's an hourly fee that can be used and is prorated on an as-need basis. For example, if a customer has a large amount of extras at a commercial property that our driver has to clean up and reload, or if a drop box driver is asked to wait on a site to find someone to move a vehicle that is blocking the box, things like that. So that was the clarification that we've been provided in writing by one of our haulers. And I didn't know if, I figured that piece of information may help your deliberations. Thank you for letting me interrupt your deliberations with that data.
That's fascinating, Mr. LaFrance, because I was possibly charged that fee today and I was quoted $1.40 a minute, which is exactly what that comes out to be. So I at least have a better sense if people want to understand what was being picked up at my house, but I was basically told if it takes more than 10 minutes to load it, it will cost $1.40 a minute to load it past 10 minutes from Pride. So that's consistent with at least one experience. I don't know if that helps anybody. Council President Lube, do you feel any differently about moving forward with that now additional explanation?
Yeah, I think that's helpful just to have a couple of scenarios and understand what it is. So I would be comfortable moving forward. I also appreciate that you have personal experience and have shared that. That's helpful.
I just didn't know it. Like until Toby just read that, I couldn't have linked those together, but I quickly did the math and I was like, hey, that's the exact same amount per minute. Councilor Goodhouse, do you have a thought as well now with that additional clarification?
I agree the same way that now with the clarification and knowing what it is, then I'm fine with moving forward with that as part of the motion.
Is there a motion then?
Councilor Goodhouse, I move to approve resolution number 21-03.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, please read the number and title of the resolution.
Resolution number 21-03, a resolution amending the citywide master fees and charges schedule, which was adopted under resolution number 20-32 and 20-54.
And City Recorder, a roll call vote, please.
Council President Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Shaw,
Yes.
Mayor Snyder,
Yes.
Councilor Goodhouse,
Yes.
and Councilor Newton.
Yes.
Okay, resolution number 21-03 is adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. We have no non-agenda items. Interim City Manager Nyland, administrative report.
Good evening. Yes, I do have an administrative report, and Youth Counselor Calderon, I will keep it somewhat short so you can get back to studying, which I know is a top priority for all of us. So I wanted to start this report with some really good news. So beginning today, the Washington County Libraries ended overdue fines on all materials. So those included in the cooperative will no longer charge overdue fees for late library materials. This is a huge step in equity for all of our patrons, and we are eager to welcome back people who may have stopped using our resources because they can't afford to pay these fines. So welcome back, patrons. We look forward to working with you again. So last week I mentioned that the library strategic plan process is underway. At that point, there were over 400 people who participated in the survey. This week, that has doubled. We have 800 people who've completed that survey, which is available on the library's website. It's available in English and Spanish and will be open through February 1st. So I just wanted to say great job, library, and our engaged patrons. We really appreciate the thoughtfulness you are putting into shaping our services. Earlier this month, you approved support to businesses that were impacted by the January 7th riot. And you granted up to $20,000 to be put aside for assistance. We've started receiving expense reports and for those who are seeking reimbursement. So far, we've received 7 applications. Total funding request at this time is a little over $7,000. So we have just under $13,000 left for those seeking assistance. Last night, we held another public safety advisory board, or as Chief likes to say, the PSAB. It was another great, inspiring conversation. The group really started focusing on developing their work plan and sequencing of issues that they'd like to tackle and cover. So the next meeting will be held on Monday, February 9th, and we are starting to take public comment for those meetings. And the last note, I just want to thank everyone for this opportunity to provide these reports and really highlighting all the good work that our staff are doing each and every day. So tonight, as you know, this will be my last administrative report as our new city manager, Steve Reimer, will be taking over this duty next week. So I guess this is when I do my mic drop, but I don't have a mic and I would never drop it. I'm more of like gently place it on the table, but I'll like. So I just want to
don't drop your laptop either.
I know.
So Steve is going to give the report next week on day 2 at the city, or day 3. I'm impressed. I know he's listening tonight, so
he's probably taking notes. Like I will be doing.
And it's Groundhog's Day, so hopefully it doesn't repeat.
It's never repeating because we're doing so much to report out. So yeah. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. And really, Kathy, I want to thank you on behalf of the community and the council and the city staff for serving in the interim role for the last number of months and keeping us on track during a very challenging time, and became even more challenging in early January. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So on that note,
all right.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say thank you again.
All right. We have no executive sessions scheduled. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. City Recorder, roll call vote, please.
Council President Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Shaw?
Yes.
Mayor Snyder?
Yes.
Councilor Goodhouse?
Yes.
And Councilor Newton?
Yes.
All right. right. I just want to note for Mr. Reimer, we didn't always take roll call votes to adjourn, but in COVID times online, we've made a decision to roll call vote everything. So we probably look silly right now to you, but that's why. So with that, we are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Good night.